In the cold rush of a city that never slows down, where glances are lost and no one seems to notice anyone, a young man with a backpack on his shoulders and a tired look walked quickly, trying to escape the light rain that was beginning to fall. It was just another Friday, another one. One of those days when the body is present, but the soul wanders far away, buried in routine. His name was Lucas. He was 24 years old, working in a cramped office, dreaming of things he couldn't yet name. For anything that night, just the way home. But fate, that silent old architect, had other plans. As he waited for the light to change to cross the avenue, something in the corner of his eye made him stop. A silhouette, small, fragile, static as if time had refused to pass for her. It was an elderly woman, with gray hair tied in a simple bun, an old coat, and a broken expression. She looked around but seemed to see nothing, lost not only in space but perhaps people also passed by her as if she were part of the landscape. No one stopped. No one looked. Lucas hesitated. For a second he considered going with the flow like everyone else. But there was something there, something he couldn't explain. A silent anguish in that woman's gaze, which seemed to scream even without making a sound. He approached slowly. "Are you okay, ma'am?" he asked gently. She looked at him, as if trying to remember a face she'd never seen. Then she answered in a low voice, almost a whisper broken by the wind, "I'm looking for my son, but I think I took the wrong path." Those words pierced Lucas like an icy needle. He didn't understand why, he just felt it. The elderly woman held an old, weathered photo. It showed a baby in a young woman's arms. On the back, hand-scrawled, was a date, August 12, 1999. Lucas had no idea what that woman had faced. He didn't know that this mistake concealed a story buried for more than 2 decades. Life-changing choices. A story of secrets. But something about that dinner bothered him deeply. She was shaking, not just from the cold. She was shaking from fear, from suppressed despair, from an emptiness that seemed to have been with her for years. And yet there was hope in her eyes, as if by some miracle the world had finally placed someone before her to listen. Lucas didn't imagine it, but the two were already connected long before that meeting. She wasn't just a lost lady. He wasn't just a kind young man. It was the past coming back to reclaim a forgotten piece of truth. What began as a gesture of empathy would quickly turn into a journey of discovery, a revelation as unexpected as it was impossible to ignore. And while the city remained indifferent, Lucas decided he would not leave her alone. He just didn't know that by holding her hand, he was also touching the roots of his own story. Because sometimes crossing a street, it is also crossing an invisible line that separates what we are from what we were destined to be. Lucas, 24 years old, an ordinary face among millions. He worked in a modest office in the city center. His day began before sunrise and ended when the last light in the building went out. No one noticed his absence. No one expected his arrival. He just walked on. That Friday was no different. And even though his body was moving inside, Lucas dragged himself along, tired not only from the tasks, but from the emptiness, same itself. Noises, the same footsteps. The city was too big, too noisy, and he too small. But that night, there was something different in the air. It was raining lightly, but enough for the drops to stick to the lenses of your glasses and the loose strands of your hair. The traffic lights blinked red, reflecting off the puddles on the asphalt. Horns honked from all directions, and people hurried as if their destination was always more urgent than any life around them. Lucas walked around, backpack soaked and his thoughts far away. He just wanted to get home, take off his wet shoes, and sink into the couch. But life, as it always does, decided to interrupt his plans. It was then that he saw it. Amid the crowd, dodging the raindrops, a woman stood motionless on the sidewalk, like a forgotten piece on a moving chessboard. She wore an old navy blue coat made of worn wool. She carried a cloth bag over her shoulders and a look of complete disorientation. She didn't ask for help. She didn't cry. She didn't call out to anyone. But there was something in her posture that screamed for help. While everyone ignored her, Lucas stopped. For a moment he felt time slow down around him, as if the noise of the city had diminished, as if the chaos had receded into the background. The lady was shivering, and not just because of the rain. She clutched something in her hands, a photograph, faded, bent at the corners. Her eyes searched for someone or some memory, and then she murmured softly a word, a name. Lucas didn't understand, but it made his skin crawl. It was like hearing a whisper from the past piercing the night, a name he didn't recognize, but somehow felt familiar. And at that very moment, a thought flashed through his mind. What if it was my grandmother? What if it was my mother there, alone, ignored by everyone? This empathy simple human kept him from turning away. He took a deep breath, crossed the street, and walked toward her. Heavier. Each step I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what I would do. I just knew that I couldn't leave that woman in that state. Coming closer, he got a better look at her face. The wrinkles told a story no one there wanted to hear. Her eyes were wet perhaps from the rain, perhaps from longing, and her body seemed to carry more than time. It carried the weight of unresolved memories. Lucas approached calmly, afraid of scaring her. "Hi, is everything okay with you?" he asked. She looked at him slowly with a mixture of fear and hope, like someone who recognizes something but can't quite put their finger on it. Then, in a weak, choked voice, she said, "I'm looking for my son, but I think I got lost." These words hit Lucas like thunder. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. His heart raced. Something inside him stirred, a premonition, an uneasiness. Looking for my son. That phrase echoed in his mind like a riddle. Who was that son? Where was he? Why was she alone? Did that situation seem so close? Lucas didn't know it yet, but that simple gesture, stopping and listening, would set him on a path of no return. A path that would not only help that woman, but would reveal truths buried for years. Truths that would change everything. Lucas approached cautiously. His steps were light, but his mind was already filled with unease. He didn't know exactly what he was doing. He just felt he couldn't ignore that woman. The lady turned slowly with a lost look in her eyes, as if it took her a while to recognize that someone had finally stopped. "Is everything okay, Mom?" he asked, his voice calm. She hesitated before answering, as if struggling with the reality in front of her. "I don't know where I am. I'm looking for my son." Those words didn't just sound like a cry for help. They sounded like an open wound, like an ancient lament echoing amid the concrete and indifference of the city. The camera focuses on his wrinkled, time-scarred face. It wasn't just her age. It was the weight of the years she'd spent waiting, searching, wondering, day after day, where that baby she'd held in her arms for such a short time was. In her hands, she held a photograph. Old, yellowed, the paper was beginning to tear at the corners. It was the image of a baby in the arms of a young woman, her eyes still swollen from childbirth, but with a smile that tried to hide her fear. Lucas looked at the photo for a few seconds. It bothered him. I didn't know why. With empathy, or perhaps something stronger, something instinctive, born from the soul, he offered help. "Let's go over there, get something warm, and see how I can help." The woman nodded slightly, and they walked together under the steady sound of the rain. They entered a small, nearly empty cafe where the smell of fresh coffee and baked bread contrasted with the cool night outside. Lucas ordered a tea for her. He ordered a coffee for himself. They sat near the window. Outside continued to pass by like hurried shadows. But there, in that small space, time seemed to slow down. The lady held the cup with both hands. She was trembling, not just from the cold, but from everything she still carried inside her. "This is my granddaughter. My daughter gave birth to this boy in 1999. But she couldn't keep him. My sons-in-law wouldn't let her. They said she was too young, that it would ruin her future. And he was given away, taken away as a baby." Soft emotions in the background. Camera shows the photo again. Close-up of the handwritten date on the back, August 12th, 1999. "My daughter was never the same again. She went silent, and she left a few years later. I stayed, and I searched for a long time, but I never got any answers until I didn't know where to begin." Lucas stared at the image. Something about that baby's face, something about that woman. It affected him in a way that was difficult to explain. Up for adoption, 1999. His heart began to race. August, at that moment, given, he remembered something he had avoided thinking about for a long time. His own story. He had been adopted. He knew it. His adoptive mother had always been open about it. She said his birth mother was young, that she couldn't keep him, that details were scarce. But until then, he never wanted to know more, never dared to look. And now there, in front of that fragile and determined lady, it was as if the past was knocking on the doors he never thought he had in his hand. That photo, that date, that story, everything seemed to scream a single truth. What if it's about me? But Lucas still wasn't sure. He swallowed hard. He avoided rushing. I needed proof. I needed to understand if it was a coincidence, or if life was about to reveal a secret that had been buried for decades. And even with his heart racing, he tried to remain calm. "And you never heard anything about him again?" Her eyes shook her. "Nothing, no name, no city, nothing. I just know that something inside me tells me he's still here, that I'll still see him, even if it's just one last time." Lucas swallowed again. He felt a lump in his throat, and for the first time he was afraid of the answer, afraid of the truth. That night, which had begun like any other, now seemed suspended in time. Inside that silent cafe, Lucas tried to control his breathing. His hands were cold wildly. His thoughts. The woman in front of him was no longer just a lost lady. She was the thread that could connect all the loose ends of his story. He couldn't look away from the photo. The date, her face, The way she held that paper as if it were the last link to something she didn't want to forget. A whirlwind was growing inside him. It was as if his body were there, but his mind had been dragged somewhere far away, to the room where he grew up, to the unanswered silences, to the questions he had always avoided asking, until, with his heart pounding, he took his cell phone out of his pocket. He typed with trembling fingers the number of the woman who raised him. He called once, twice, 3 times. "Hi, my son, are you home yet?" said the voice on the other end with the same tenderness as always. But at that moment, Lucas was no longer just the son she knew. He was a man on the verge of a revelation. He swallowed hard. He took a deep breath, and he asked, his voice breaking, "Mom, what do you know about my biological mother?" Silence. On the other end of the line, time also seemed to stop. No immediate response, no sound. Just the muffled sound of her breathing, as if she were weighing the words before speaking. And then, in a voice lower, more tired, more sincere than ever, she spoke. She was very young, very young. Her parents didn't accept it. They said she would ruin her own future. And she was forced to give you up. A lady tried to stop her. Couldn't. But she tried a lot, you know. She said it was wrong. But she had no choice. Lucas closed his eyes. It all made sense. That lady in front of you, she was not a stranger. It was the woman who tried to stop him from being taken away from his daughter. It was his grandmother who fought for him, even when no one else did. Her search was not for a lost son. It was for him. Lucas, that boy in the picture, the baby from 1999. She never gave up. She never stopped. Later, they were face to face, decades, unaware that fate had brought them back together. He hung up the phone silently, still digesting everything. He looked at the lady with new eyes. She remained there, holding the cup of tea that was already growing cold, with a look full of hope and pain. And then Lucas felt something he couldn't describe. It wasn't just emotion. It was a kind of recognition that comes from somewhere deep within the soul. You stood up, walked around the table, and knelt beside her. He held her hand. She looked at him, surprised. And he, with tears in his eyes, said, "I think I've found what you were looking for." The lady's eyes widened. Her breath hitched for a second. "What? What are you saying?" Lucas took his phone out of his pocket. He opened the camera. He pointed it at his own face. "It's me, August 1999. Adopted. Son of a young woman who was forced to give me up, and grandson of a woman who never gave up." Began to brought her hands to her mouth, but intense. The tears. Then she cupped his face with both hands, touching his cheeks as if trying to prove it was real. "You are my grandson?" Lucas nodded, swallowing back tears. She began to sob, not of sadness but of relief, of years of waiting crumbling in a single instant. There, among empty tables and forgotten cups, 2 lives were stitched together again. Not by luck, but by fate. That night, 2 lost souls met. Not by something chance, that, no matter how much we try to understand, but for something bigger and hides between the lines of life, the destination. Lucas didn't know he would leave work to find himself. He didn't know that the lady on the sidewalk, invisible to the rest of the world, would be the mirror of everything he never knew he needed. She, on the other hand, didn't know if there was still time. The world had taken so many things from him. Her daughter's youth, the grandson she never saw grow up, the chance to fix what was done. But what the world didn't take from her was hope. The hope that silently resisted in every walk, in every glance cast at the crowd, in every photo kept as a treasure. Hope that one day someone would listen, and someone listened. In the cafeteria, amid cold cups and choked words, the silence was broken, and with it years of pain and disconnection were also broken. Lucas and his grandmother didn't just hug like two strangers meeting again. They embraced like two pieces of a story that finally came together, as if time, despite its cruelty, had still left a gap, a space for a new beginning. She touched his face as if to decorate it with her fingertips. He held her hand as if to say, "You are not alone anymore." And in that moment, no words were needed, because what is said from the heart needs no explanation. After that day, Lucas's life changed. Not the way movies usually show it, with spectacular twists and turns or perfect happy endings. And right away, silent, he began to visit his grandmother frequently, bringing flowers, listening to stories, laughing at old tales, and above all, giving her what she so missed, presents. He found out more about his biological mother. He read letters she left hidden, and he understood that even though they were far away, she never forgot him. He was a victim of an era, of an imposed decision, but he never stopped loving him. Lucas cried for her. He forgave her, and he felt her alive in every trait inherited, in her gaze, in her way of speaking, even in her silence. And the grandmother gained more than a grandson. You got a chance, a redemption she never thought she would have. He was able to look back with more peace, could say, "I waited, and it was worth it." Today, the two walk together through the same neighborhood where they met. Sometimes they go to the same coffee shop. They sit at the same table, and they observe the hustle and bustle of this city with a different perspective. Now, when Lucas sees someone invisible on the street, a lonely lady, a confused child, a silent man, he doesn't ignore it, because he learned that life hides great stories in small encounters, and that sometimes a simple gesture, like stopping to ask, "Are you okay?" can redeem decades of silence, can heal wounds, it can reveal truths, it can change destinies. Because sometimes the past walks the streets, just waiting to be recognized. And on this journey, when the forgotten is remembered, something more powerful than any rational explanation is born. Reconnecting with our roots, Lucas discovered more than a grandmother, discovered your story, and he gave her and himself the most valuable gift, the right to start over. And you? Do you believe that destiny crosses paths for a reason? Have you ever experienced something similar? A reunion, a discovery, a moment that seemed written by the hands of time? Leave your story in the comments. I believe in the power of reunion. If this story touched your heart, like the video, share with someone special and subscribe to the channel so as not to miss other stories like this. Because sometimes what you're looking for most, it's just a gesture away. See you in the next story.